Calgary Flames, 1997-98. 26 wins, 41 losses, 15 overtime losses. The 1998 Flames were like a country song. Everything that could go wrong did. They finished 11th in the West, missed the playoffs for a second straight year, and had 5 goalies suit up, none of whom could stop a beach ball. Their top scorer, Theoren Fleury, begged for help. Their blue line looked like it belonged in juniors. And the worst part? The apathy. The Saddle Dome was quiet. The fans were defeated. This wasn't rock bottom, that came later. But it was the year Calgary hockey became a punchline. Buffalo Sabres, 2013-14. 21 wins, 51 losses, 10 overtime losses. The Sabres weren't rebuilding, they were actively tanking. This was the season that broke Ryan Miller. The guy who carried Team USA in the Olympics looked like he was carrying a beer league defense. Buffalo scored the fewest goals in the league, by far. They had no first-line talent, no second-line depth, and 0 goaltending after the trade deadline. Ted Nolan tried his best behind the bench, but this roster wasn't designed to win. It was designed to lose, and it worked. They got the number 2 pick. They wanted McDavid. They got Eichel, a franchise cornerstone, until they traded him too. Nashville Predators, 1998-99, 28 wins, 47 losses, 7 overtime losses. The first year of Smashville was more like Crashville. This wasn't a hockey team. It was a marketing experiment on ice. The Predators were an expansion team with no stars, no expectations, and no offense. Their top scorer had 50 points. Their power play was 24th in a 27-team league. They didn't just lose, they made losing look boring. The only thing exciting was the logo and the pregame guitar riffs. But the fans showed up. And somehow, the pain made the loyalty stronger. Nashville hockey was born in a pit of L's, and they still cheered. New Jersey Devils, 1983-84, 17 wins, 56 losses, 7 overtime losses. Before 3 cups, before the trap, before Brodeur, the Devils were a disaster. Their third season after moving from Colorado was a clown show. They gave up 398 goals. Their goal differential was -125. Opponents basically preloaded the scoreboard before puck drop. Opposing coach Don Cherry called them a Mickey Mouse organization. And he was right. The only highlight? The misery forced management to get serious. They drafted Scott Stevens and Martin Brodeur a few years later, but in '84, they were the worst team in the show, and it wasn't close. Chicago Blackhawks, 2003-2004, 20 wins, 47 losses, 15 overtime losses. The Hawks weren't just losing, they were disappearing. In 2003-2004, the Chicago Blackhawks were a shadow of their former selves. Their top scorer, Tuomo Ruutu, had just 51 points, and he was a rookie. The team cycled through 5 different goaltenders, like they were trying to win a raffle, not hockey games. The defense was leaky, the offense was invisible, and morale was buried somewhere beneath the ice. The United Center felt like a library, half empty and eerily quiet. Hawks gear disappeared from the streets. Kids wore Red Wings jerseys instead. The franchise wasn't just bad, it was irrelevant, forgotten. The only reason this season matters in hindsight is because it was the last gasp before a total overhaul. The 2004-2005 lockout gave the team a reset. They won the draft lottery, got Patrick Kane, built around him, and rose from the ashes. But in 2004, Chicago hockey was dead on arrival and no one came to the funeral. Arizona Coyotes, now Utah Mammoth. 2014-15, 24 wins, 50 losses, 8 overtime losses. This wasn't just bad. This was existential. The Coyotes in 2015 felt like they forgot they were a national hockey team. They lost 10 straight games, twice. They ranked 29th in goals scored, 28th in goals against, and somehow looked worse than the numbers. Mike Smith posted a .904 save percentage and still got shelled nightly. Their leading scorer? Oliver Ekman-Larsson, a defenseman. This was the season where Arizona fans didn't cheer goals. They celebrated draft odds. The team bottomed out so hard they won the McDavid sweepstakes and still lost the lottery. Edmonton got McDavid, Arizona got Dylan Strome. Carolina Hurricanes, 2002-3, 22 wins, 43 losses, 17 overtime losses. 1 year removed from a Stanley Cup final appearance, the Hurricanes crashed harder than a Zamboni on black ice. In 2002, they shocked the world. In 2003, they reminded everyone they're still the Whalers in disguise. Ron Francis was 40, Jeff O'Neill forgot how to score, and their power play was so cold it needed a parka. They finished dead last in the league in goals and special teams. The arena was so empty you could hear the players' thoughts. This wasn't just a step back, it was a nosedive off the upper bowl. Colorado Avalanche, 2016 to 2017, 22 wins, 56 losses, 4 overtime losses. A historic franchise, Hall of Famers, cups, and then this. 2017 was a hockey horror show. They didn't just lose, they got humiliated, night after night. Nathan MacKinnon hadn't broken out yet, and Duchene looked like he was already mentally traded. The defense? Non-existent. The goaltending? Sad. They finished with 48 points, the fewest in the salary cap era. Even the Coyotes lapped them. The Avs were so bad it felt like karma for letting Patrick Roy coach with no leash. But here's the twist. The very next season, they made the playoffs. This was rock bottom, and the bounce back was violent. Columbus Blue Jackets, 2001 to 2002. 22 wins, 47 losses, 13 overtime losses. Year 2 of the Jackets experiment was like trying to teach a dog calculus. They were just lost. Rick Nash hadn't arrived yet. Ron Tugnut was doing his best, but the defense left him out to dry nightly. They finished last in goals scored, dead last on the power play, and their top scorer had 45 points. This was a team with no identity, no toughness, no game plan. Just an overpaid roster and a confused fan base wondering why they left football season early. It would take nearly 20 years to win a playoff round, and it started with this disaster of a foundation. Dallas Stars, 2008 to 2009. 36 wins, 35 losses, 11 overtime losses. You look at the record and think, that's not awful. But watch the tape. It was a slow bleed. The Stars were coming off a conference finals run, then imploded in real time. Injuries stacked up. Turco fell off. Madonna was aging. And then came Sean Avery. Yes, that Sean Avery. He signed with Dallas, chirped about sloppy seconds, and got suspended for being Sean Avery. It tanked the locker room. The team spiraled. They missed the playoffs and spent the next few seasons in no man's land. This wasn't just a down year, it was a culture virus. Detroit Red Wings, 2019 to 2020. 17 wins, 49 losses, 5 overtimes losses. The Red Wings were royalty. 25 straight playoff appearances, 4 cups, legends everywhere. Then 2020 hit, and the crown got melted in a microwave. This team wasn't rebuilding, they were collapsing. They allowed the most goals, scored the fewest, had the worst goal differential in modern NHL history, -122. That's not a typo. Dylan Larkin looked like he was aging 10 years per game. Jimmy Howard had a .882 save percentage. Blashill coached like he was holding a Sudoku puzzle behind the bench. The Wings were so bad, the league mercy ruled them. Edmonton Oilers, 2009 to 2010, 27 wins, 47 losses, 8 overtime losses. The once mighty Oilers spent most of the 2000s like a washed-up rock band, clinging to old hits while the crowd left the arena. But 2010, that was the encore nobody asked for. They finished dead last. Their goaltending tandem of Jeff Deloriers and Devin Dubnyk got lit up nightly. Pat Quinn looks like he aged a decade behind the bench. Dustin Penner led the team in points, a sentence that tells you everything. But the tank job paid off. They landed the #1 pick and drafted Taylor Hall. The decade of darkness was still far from over, but this was the black hole at the center. Florida Panthers, 2012 to 2013, 15 wins, 27 losses, 6 overtimes losses. Shortened season, long suffering. After making the playoffs the year before, the Panthers reminded everyone why they hadn't been taken seriously since Pavel Bure left town. They finished last in the NHL in points, goals against, and save percentage. Jose Theodore was 36 and running on fumes. Jacob Markstrom was thrown into the fire early and roasted alive. Their power play was invisible. Their defense, optional. Every game looked like shinny with no backcheck. The Panthers didn't just regress, they fell off a cliff and hit every rock on the way down. Los Angeles Kings, 2007 to 8, 32 wins, 43 losses, 17 overtime losses. Before the Cups, before the parade confetti, the Kings were stuck in National Hockey League purgatory. 2008 was that awkward phase. Too bad to compete, too decent to bottom out properly. They had Kopitar and nothing else. Jason LaBarbera was their starting goalie, a career backup forced to play 45 games behind a leaky defense. The Kings gave up the second most goals in the league. The fans were so checked out, you could bring a beach chair to Staples Center and no one would care. This was the last gasp before they committed to a full rebuild. And it was painful. Montreal Canadians, 1939-40. 10 wins, 33 losses, 5 overtime losses. You have to go deep into the vault for Montreal's lowest point before the dynasty, before Rocket Richard, back when they were just bad. 1940 was pure misery. They finished dead last in a 7-team league. Their leading scorer had 27 points. The defense was as sturdy as a wet baguette. Fans still showed up because this was Montreal, but the vibe was grim. The team had no swagger, no scoring, no chance. This season was so brutal, it forced management to rethink everything. 2 years later, they brought in Richard. The rest is history. But this was prehistory pain. Boston Bruins, 1966-67. 17 wins, 43 losses, 10 overtime losses. Before the big bad Bruins, before Orr, Esposito, and Parades, there was this. The last year before expansion and the last year the Bruins were an embarrassment. They finished dead, last in a 6-team league. Their offense, non-existent. Their defense, leaky. Their fans, begging for something. The only light in the darkness, a 17-year-old Bobby Orr playing his rookie season. He was already the best player on the ice. But this season, it was a farewell tour to losing, because the next year, everything changed. New York Islanders, 2000-1. 21 wins, 51 losses, 10 overtime losses. The Islanders were once a dynasty. 4 straight cups, Hall of Famers, legends. But by 2001, that history felt like ancient mythology. The 2000-1 Islanders were barely functional. They finished dead last in the Eastern Conference and looked like they belonged in a beer league. Head coach Butch Goring was fired in just 25 games. Their goaltending tandem was Chris Terreri and Rick DiPietro. The latter still a teenager and nowhere near ready. Their top scorer? Mariusz Czerkawski. And no, that's not a punchline. That's who they were relying on. The offense was toothless. The defense was invisible. The energy at Nassau Coliseum was funereal. You could hear pucks hit the glass like it was a practice skate. Fans showed up with paper bags over their heads and signs begging ownership to sell. There was no vision, no timeline. Just years of poor drafting, bad contracts, and a GM who felt allergic to progress. Everything that once made Long Island proud was buried under layers of mediocrity and apathy. It wasn't just the worst team in the league. It was a franchise in free fall. New York Rangers, 1992-93. 34 wins, 39 losses, 11 overtime losses. The Rangers were supposed to be elite. This was a roster built to contend. Mark Messier, Mike Richter, Adam Graves. Names that would soon be engraved in franchise history. And yet, in 1992-93, they imploded under the weight of their own expectations. They missed the playoffs entirely, finishing dead last in their division. Head coach Roger Nielsen was fired mid-season after losing the locker room. The bench was chaotic, the leadership fractured, and the on-ice product looked completely disjointed. Despite the star power, the team lacked identity and consistency. Messier, the captain brought in to lead them to a cup, looked exhausted and frustrated, as if he was dragging a broken machine behind him. Fans at Madison Square Garden went from hopeful to hostile. It wasn't a lack of talent. It was a failure of structure, urgency, and cohesion. But if there's a silver lining, it's this. That collapse sparked a fire. Management cleared house, brought in Mike Keenan, retooled the system, and demanded accountability. 1 year later, the Rangers lifted the Stanley Cup for the first time in 54 years. But 1993? That was the humiliation that made history possible. The storm before the parade. Ottawa Senators, 1992-93. 10 wins, 70 losses, 2 overtime losses. Yes, you read that right, 10 wins. In an 82-game season, the expansion Ottawa Senators didn't just struggle, they redefined futility. They were outscored by more than 200 goals. Finished with just 24 points, and to this day it holds the record for the worst road performance in NHL history. 0-41-0 if you count the final road game of their following season. They lost every single game outside Ottawa. That's not just a stat. That's a Guinness World Record in sadness. The roster was a Frankenstein of late-round picks, AHL veterans, and waiver wire leftovers. Their goalie, Peter Sidorkiewicz, faced a nightly barrage of rubber, often making 40-plus saves just to keep games close in the first period. The defense offered no protection. The offense was useless, and the coaching staff, led by Rick Bowness, could have used therapy more than strategy. The team was mocked league-wide. Visiting teams treated them like a guaranteed 2 points. Players joked about padding stats before the opening face-off. Even fans in Ottawa, so excited to have hockey back, started wearing paper bags and quietly switching allegiances by Christmas. Kids in Sens jerseys suddenly owned Leafs hats, just in case. But somehow, through all that misery, the foundation was laid. The team slowly built through drafts, endured more pain, and a decade later, they were President's Trophy contenders. But in 1993, they weren't a hockey team. They were a glorified bye week, and it was brutal. Philadelphia Flyers, 2006-7. 22 wins, 48 losses, 12 overtime losses. The Broad Street Bullies turned into the Broad Street Babysitters. The 2007 Flyers were the worst team in franchise history, and they earned every loss. They cycled through 3 head coaches. Their top scorer, Simon Gagne, had no help. Forsberg's foot gave out. The defense was held together with duct tape and Danny Markov. The goaltending, let's not talk about it. Robert Esche and Antero Niittymaki got roasted nightly. The team finished with 56 points, dead last in the NHL. The only upside? It landed them the 2nd overall pick, and they drafted JVR instead of Patrick Kane. Even their draft missed. Pittsburgh Penguins, 1983-84. 16 wins, 58 losses, 6 overtime losses. It wasn't just a tank, it was the tank. The 1984 Penguins didn't just stumble into last place, they sprinted to it with intent. This was a calculated collapse, designed with one goal in mind. Draft a generational phenom from Laval named Mario Lemieux. The roster was a mess, a skeleton crew of spare parts, aging veterans, and call-ups who didn't belong in the National Hockey League. Their top scorer, Doug Shedden, managed just 53 points. The team lost 13 of their last 14 games, and not by accident. The effort on the ice looked like a training video for how not to play defense. Fans and media openly accused ownership of throwing games. The team denied it, while dressing what looked like an American Hockey League all-star team night after night. The Civic Arena was half empty most nights, echoing with boos and despair. The franchise was bleeding money, and there were real fears that the team might fold or relocate if something didn't change fast. But the plan worked. They finished dead last, won the draft lottery, and selected Lemieux first overall. He didn't just score goals, he saved the Penguins from extinction. Attendance soared. The team became relevant, and within a few years, Pittsburgh raised 2 Stanley Cups. But make no mistake, the 1983-84 season wasn't just a rock bottom. It was a blueprint for how to lose with purpose. A masterclass in strategic failure, with a dynasty waiting on the other side. San Jose Sharks, 1992-93. 11 wins, 71 losses, 2 overtime losses. You want rock bottom? Here it is. The 1993 Sharks lost 71 games, second most in NHL history. They allowed 414 goals. Their goalies, Archers Urbe and Jeff Hackett, were basically shooting gallery targets. The team lost 17 games in a row at one point. Their penalty kill? Historically bad. They look like a men's league team that wandered onto NHL ice by mistake. The Cow Palace, their home arena, looks like it belonged in a rodeo, not the NHL. But out of that wreckage, they drafted Viktor Kozlov and eventually became competitive. 1993 was just a violent birth. Seattle Kraken, 2021-22. 27 wins, 49 losses, 6 overtimes losses. In their debut season, the Kraken were hyped like Vegas 2.0. Instead, they were expansion 1.0. They couldn't score, couldn't finish, and couldn't stop a beach ball. Philip Grubauer signed a big contract, then posted an .889 save percentage. Yikes. They passed on elite players in the expansion draft and tried to build a team game with fourth-liners. The result? A slow, passive squad that got outworked nightly. Climate Pledge Arena was loud, but the on-ice product was quiet. This wasn't a disaster, but it was a reality check. Vegas was the exception. Seattle? They got the real expansion experience. St. Louis Blues, 2005-6. 21 wins, 46 losses, 15 overtime losses. In a city known for big expectations, the 2006 Blues forgot how to play hockey. They lost 11 straight at one point. Doug Weight was traded mid-season. Chris Pronger had already been shipped out. The roster was a skeleton crew of misfits and expiring contracts. Curtis Sanford and Patrick Lallam tried to hold the net and got lit up every other night. The team finished dead last in the NHL, snapping a 25-year playoff streak. This wasn't just a bad season, it was a complete teardown, but it paved the way for a new era, eventually. Tampa Bay Lightning, 2007-8, 31 wins, 42 losses, 9 overtime losses. Before the Cups came chaos. The 2008 Lightning were a disaster wrapped in star power. They had Le Cavalier and still finished dead last. The defense was porous, the goaltending worse. Johan Holmqvist and Kari Ramo got torched nightly. Head coach John Tortorella lost the room. And the ownership group, a circus. The team gave up 266 goals and couldn't close games to save their lives. But somehow, this season landed them Steven Stamkos with the #1 pick. So, yeah, they sucked, but it paid off. This was the final storm before the lightning struck. Toronto Maple Leafs, 2015-16, 29 wins, 42 losses, 11 overtime losses. The Leafs had been bad before, but 2016? That was next level losing. They were dead last in the NHL. Their top scorer was P.A. Parento, a waiver claim. Jonathan Bernier went 0-11-3 to start the season. It was pure misery, but behind the scenes, something was brewing. Shanahan was building his vision, and the team tanked perfectly. They won the lottery and drafted Austin Matthews, so while the fans suffered, the front office played chess. It was the ugliest season in recent memory, and it saved the franchise. Vancouver Canucks, 1997-98, 25 wins, 43 losses, 14 overtime losses. The 98 Canucks weren't rebuilding, they were malfunctioning. They had Mark Messier, Pavel Bure, and Trevor Linden, and still imploded. The locker room was toxic, the GM was clueless. And Mike Keenan came in like a wrecking ball, trading Linden, benching Bure, and losing the fan base. The defense? A disaster. Goaltending? Inconsistent. Power play? Broken. This season wasn't just bad, it fractured the team's identity. It took nearly a decade to rebuild the damage. For a franchise craving its first cup, 1998 was a brutal detour into dysfunction. Vegas Golden Knights, 2021-22. 43 wins, 31 losses, 8 overtime losses. On paper, it doesn't look bad, but in context, this was Vegas's identity crisis. Injuries ravaged the roster. They traded for Eichel mid-season, but chemistry never clicked. Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty missed huge chunks of time. Robin Lehner battled injuries and criticism. And somehow, despite 94 points, they missed the playoffs, for the first time ever. The vibes were off, the locker room was fractured, and fans started wondering if the magic was gone. It wasn't rock bottom, but it was the first fall from grace in a franchise used to overachieving. Washington Capitals, 1974-75, 8 wins, 67 losses, 5 overtime losses. The worst season in National Hockey League history, period. The Caps' inaugural season was so bad it became folklore. They won just 8 games. They allowed 446 goals. They went 1-39 on the road. Their coach publicly apologized for the roster. Their players begged for mercy. This wasn't a team. It was a live-action punching bag. But somehow, they survived. They drafted smart. They built slow. And eventually, they lifted a cup. But 1975? That was pure suffering, and it'll never be topped. Winnipeg Jets, 2015-16, 35 wins, 39 losses, 8 overtime losses. The Jets had promise, young talent, loud fans. Then 2016 hit, and they slipped on their own expectations. The defense was a mess. Andre Pavelec got hurt. Connor Hellebuck wasn't ready. Big Buff was throwing hits, but not saving games. The team allowed the 4th most goals in the league and missed the playoffs by a mile. It was the kind of year where every game felt winnable, until it wasn't. But this season gave them the 2nd overall pick, Patrick Laney, so it wasn't pointless, just painful. Minnesota Wild, 2011-12, 35 wins, 36 losses, 11 overtime losses. It doesn't look that bad on paper, but watch it unfold and you'll understand. The 2012 Wild started the season on fire. They were first in the league by December, and then they collapsed, hard. Injuries shredded the roster. Mikko Koivu went down. Devin Setoguchi went cold. Guillaume Latendresse never came back. Their top scorer finished with 53 points. They went from first to worst in less than 100 days. The power play was lifeless. The offense? Dead last in the show. It was a full-on free-fall. They missed the playoffs, lost the fan base's faith, and reminded everyone that in Minnesota, hockey isn't always happiness. Sometimes it's heartbreak in slow motion. Anaheim Ducks, 2010-11, 30 wins, 39 loss, 13 overtime loss. This wasn't a full-on collapse like some, but for the Ducks, coming off a cup final and back-to-back strong seasons, it felt like the bottom dropped out. The once feared Mighty Ducks found themselves fighting for scraps. They finished with a losing record and missed the playoffs entirely, tanking their postseason hopes in late March. Their power play went cold. Veteran core like Timo, Solani, and Ryan Getzlaf couldn't carry the load, and the defense kept leaking opportunities like a broken dam. Jonas Hiller was decent in nets, but had no support. The team cycled through injuries and lineup changes so fast it looked like musical chairs. The Honda Center, once deafening off playoff runs, had that awkward mid-season buzzkill silence. Fans still hopeful, but hearts quietly breaking. This was a wake-up call for management. No gimmicks, no false hope. They revamped the roster, emphasized youth, and came back stronger. But in 2011, Ducks hockey was gasping for air.